in a design build, you're really asking an expert to be your single point of contact for building a new facility. They're the conductor of the symphony. They take all of the musical instruments through that process as your coach.
Welcome to the Path to Owning It podcast by Provide, hosted by me, Corey Brown, a marketing leader at Provide with over a decade in the healthcare industry. If you've found us, you're likely an aspiring or established healthcare practice owner looking for tools and advice to begin your journey or to take your practice to new heights. And you're not alone. So to help you achieve your practice ownership dreams, twice monthly, we'll tap into our unparalleled network of industry experts who will join us on our quest to provide answers to your most pressing questions. Like what you hear? Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you listen. Today, we're going to give you an overview of the design build process from site selections to move-in. We're joined by Ron Evans and Joe Golden with Cadre Construction. Ron Evans is the owner and founder of Cadre and has 34 years of real estate brokerage, development, construction, and construction management experience, specializing in human and animal healthcare facilities. Joe Golden has 25 years of experience in surgical, medical device, and veterinary sales and management, where he worked with small startups to Fortune 500 companies, covering everywhere from regionally focused territories to the entire country. They understand financing, capital risk, the pressures of construction schedules, design decisions, and the pride of ultimate ownership. And these core developer competencies bring a deep understanding of the total construction process. Ron, Joe, welcome to the show. Happy to have you.
Corey. Thanks, Corey. Good to be here.
It's quite the introduction. You guys are total pros.
Not sure we can live up to it, but let's see how it goes.
So we're here live at the Western Vet Trade Show, and I'm just curious, anything you've seen that you've been excited about?
So, every time I attend one of these events, every time I go build a new vet facility, anything related to animals, I'm blown away by so this is the emotional side, right?
Right.
The incredible relationship we have with our pets. I think this all started because of, cats and dogs and other pets that veterinarians need to take care of. They need a place to stay when we're out of town. It's an insanely inspiring industry and how much we love our animals.
Yeah.
I love it. That's why it's a passion for us.
Yeah.
We love the business.
Pet owners yourselves too?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, same here. So we're going to talk about the design build process. I'd love to go from kind of start to end with you guys. It's going to be quick, only 30 minutes.
Great.
But can you first just tell us, though, what a design build company actually is?
Yeah, so I'll simplify this a little bit. So in a design build, or what we call a design assist, and I won't go into too many of the details there.
Yeah.
It's a little deeper conversation. But you're really asking an expert, and particularly a development and construction design expert, to be your single point of contact in kind of a start to finish process for building a new facility. You can do a non-design build. That's more of what we call a design bid build. That's where you're a do-it-yourselfer. You go out and you hire an architect, you hire a civil engineer, you take this project over yourself until you get to a full set of plans. That full set of plans might take you 6 months to a year. You've done that without a lot of help.
Yeah.
And then you send it to 5 GCs and get up 5 prices. A design build, you bring that GC on up front. You hire that GC based on their qualifications. They're the conductor of the symphony.
Yeah.
They take all of the musical instruments through that process as your coach.
And I would imagine that really streamlines the process, right? To not have to try to find all of these different people yourself, right? Just to work with somebody that has it all in one place.
It streamlines the process, and I would tell anybody the greatest voice out there now is the internet. Go look up is design build less expensive or more expensive, and almost everything you find on the internet will tell you, even though you think you're getting a better deal by pricing a ground up construction to 5 different contractors, in the long run you're not.
Yeah.
It just doesn't end up that way.
Well, and it's such a big undertaking, I would imagine, right? And you want to make sure you do it the right way, but a lot of people probably haven't done this before, so they don't know where to start. So let's say that I've decided I'm ready to build my dream animal hospital. Where do I start?
Well, first off is finding the land. Do you own the land yet or not?
Right, and that's another question, right? Should I have that before I contact someone or not? What do you recommend?
I don't think so. Site selection is very important. It's not necessary to have the property, but to at least understand what you have.
Yeah.
And what can be put on that piece of property.
Yeah. And, let's talk about 2 advantages of going a ground up version versus building out a leasehold space or an existing hospital. Can you talk about the differences there a little bit?
Sure. So you've got ownership typically in a ground up ownership is something that most of our clients want now, right? They understand that their practice is going to be paying rent either way. They're going to pay rent to their landlord, who is a third party, or they're going to be paying rent to themselves. So if they do a ground up with ownership as the intent, they're still going to have a separate entity owning that facility, and their practice still needs to pay rent. It's just going to be paying it to the doctor individual or the doctor group, right?
Yeah.
And so that's usually the primary motivation in doing this. They also don't typically, you know how we feel, landlords, I'm a landlord, right?
Yeah.
We're okay people, but given the choice, we want to be our own landlord, right? And so most of the time they want to decide on their own piece of land, they want to build the facility to their own specifications, make it their dream, and they want to pay rent to themselves.
Yeah, yeah. And what kind of problems do you run into if somebody comes to you and says, hey, I have this site, I'm ready to build, but they haven't looked into any of the details about that site? What are some of the issues that might arise there?
We get a civil engineer involved, and we like to call them the architect of the dirt.
Okay.
You know, they will lay out the site, showing us what the footprint of the building will look like.
Yeah.
There's some instances where we've had some issues that, you know, the property that they have fallen in love with, actually, it's not going to work for that development. For instance, in the Austin area where we're headquartered, a client had been looking for some property, found it, got it under contract, and we discovered a heritage tree in the middle of the property, which it cut down on the size of the building that could be built on site. So we ended up getting out of that contract and looking at other properties for it. But there's situations like that.
And that's also our very first phone call. So we're a very unique model. I don't know that you can find our model replicated anywhere. I like to say anywhere,
sure.
Right? Because under one roof, we own architecture, we own construction, we own a development company, we own a brokerage company. So you ask about site selection.
Right.
We can start with our client if they don't have a site and literally take them through that process of identifying sites, getting that site under contract for them, negotiating the details of that contract, and then getting into the feasibility period. Everybody, I think, knows what that is. That's where you still can back out once you're discovering the things that might be wrong with the property. So that next phase, that civil engineering phase, is where we would do for the sites we own, because we're a third-party developer, but a first-party developer ourselves. In other words, we buy land for ourselves. Our first phone call is to a civil engineer.
Right.
We call that civil engineer and say, you do your voodoo, you know,
the voodoo that you do.
And help us figure out what skeletons might be in the closet. You'll find easements we didn't know about. They'll find there's no access to the property and you'd have to make 4 turns to get to the back of the project for entry. I've had everything you can imagine happen. That civil engineer is the first and best hire that you make. I've had a client call me and say, Ron, great news. I found a site and I bought it. And I'll say, oh, Doc, did you hire a civil engineer? He goes, well, no, but we will now. They literally did not do during that feasibility period the most important thing that you do, and that is find out if the site is truly appropriate for your requirements.
And what types of things should I be looking for in a site? And maybe some things that would be red flags that this is not a good situation.
We like to say you can build about a 10,000 square foot facility on 1 acre.
Okay.
If it needs a detention pond, which it differs in each municipality, but if it needs a detention pond, then we're looking at probably about 7,500 square feet.
Okay.
On that. So, and that's something the civil engineer would tell us. They literally will lay out that footprint of the building. Like I said earlier, architect of the dirt.
Yeah.
You know, they'll show
like
us.
That phrase.
Yeah.
And the red flags there are things like we've had setbacks, that there was a residential neighborhood behind us. That setback could be 50 feet instead of 20 feet. And again, it crunches the usability of the site. There can be a slope in the back of the site that's literally not buildable. And you know, an acre is now not an acre. They're going to analyze parking. They're going to analyze ingress and egress. They're going to help you confirm that zoning works. We've had animal facilities that are completely or a site that's appropriate for a veterinary clinic. That's standard operating hours. Come to find out, there's a deed restriction and it's not 24/7, and this was an ER that needed that. So that's disqualified. You don't know those things until you've done a feasibility study. And let me throw in, most of our clients find they can do that for less than $5,000. That is the best money you'll spend on a project.
That sounds like a good investment.
A great investment.
And that's probably why it's important to have a developer and a builder that specializes in the healthcare industry, right? To know these sort of requirements. We talk about this on the show all the time in other industries, right? Why it's important to have an industry-specific attorney or CPA. Can you talk about why it's important to have an industry-specific builder too?
So I've told this story many times, and I still laugh at myself, right? We have several niches that we specialize in. We have an industrial niche. We have a very technical construction niche, including technical human medical like dialysis, ERs, surgery centers, very highly technical construction jobs. And of course, the animal health care real estate niche that we're in. When we tried to break into that, all of our competitors used that against us.
Of course.
And I hated it. I was like, how dare you? I've built dialysis centers, I've built ERs, I've built hospitals, I can do this.
Yeah.
And we got our first job, and like anybody, that breaks into a new niche, we begin to learn what we didn't know.
Yeah.
And we begin to get good at smell controls. We begin to get good at understanding positive and negative pressures in HVAC, sound controls, critical to understand that your MEPs are designing plumbing the right way. Those are the things that we knew academically, but we didn't know in the real world.
Yeah.
When we got our first project, we had a lot of nice patient clients, and we stuck with it until we got it right, but we made some mistakes.
Sure.
Now that we've done so many of them, we're using the same argument against rookies that are trying to compete with us that I used to hate, but it's critical.
Yeah.
It is absolutely critical. We've done dozens of them, and we've got dozens more really in the hopper right now. And to have not only a builder, but a developer who understands that, and I'll talk more in a minute what a developer is and what they do. That most people don't know that.
Yeah.
And an architect, which we own an architecture firm. Our clients don't have to use us, but often that turnkey model, they love it. So that whole team that knows animal facilities is absolutely essential. And with zoning and with permitting and with restrictions and with compliance getting harder, it's more important than it ever has been.
Yeah. And we'll talk a little bit about that in just a minute. I want to hear, lastly, before we go to break, we need money to pay for all of this, right?
Oh, man.
So I know, wish we didn't, but a lot of times we got to get a loan for this.
Leave it to the banker.
Yeah, I know. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about it.
Right.
But when should one be looking into finance options? How early on in the process?
From day one.
Yeah.
It's very important to know what's available for the client, which in turn is going to tell you how big they can build.
Yeah.
And there's two phases to that, right?
Yeah.
So there's the pre-qual phase, which I tell people, it's really okay to talk to one bank. They come to you guys and they say, I'm probably not moving in for a year and a half, but I got to know how much money I have now.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Yeah.
That's real tough. They need to plan for their equity. They need to understand if they need to tidy up their financial situation, right?
Yeah.
They've got time to do that, but they need to pre-qualify first. You guys guide them through that process. And plus, nobody wants to talk to 6 banks in that process and get paperwork to get 6 pre-qual answers, right?
Right.
So they're going to talk to you, and they're going to get that pre-qualification. Then we're going to build a model around it.
Okay.
We're not just the land, not just their desires and their aesthetics. They're going to build a model around their money. Then we're going to go through, 14 months of work.
Yeah.
Right? Come out the other end, and they're going to then not start over, but they're going to finalize that loan. They're going to probably resubmit their financials, right? They're going to resubmit their latest tax returns. Then they're going to close on that loan. So it's really a two-phase process. But you know that better than I do. That's just from our perspective is we're going to design their project around many things, including their budget.
Yeah, that's the perspective I wanted to get across. So thank you for answering that. Well, gents, we've talked about what one needs to know for the beginning stages of the design build process, but when we come back, I'd like to hear more about the design and construction phase and what a doctor can really expect. More with Ron and Joe right after this. Ready to take your practice to the next level? Meet the Provide Card, the credit card built specifically for healthcare practice owners. Available in addition to your Provide practice loan, with the Provide Card, you'll be transported to a world of new opportunities for your practice, where you can access the spending power you need to build your legacy. You can earn rewards on all purchases, all the time, with no rotating categories and no point expiration. At Provide, we're creating the future of personalized banking for healthcare practice owners. To learn how to apply for the card that makes your purchases go the extra mile, contact your Provide representative or visit getprovide.com/providecard for more information, including rewards terms and conditions. I'm Corey Brown, and this is Provide's The Path to Owning It podcast. We're back with Ron Evans and Joe Golden of Cadre Construction to dive into the details of what you can expect when building your own animal hospital from the ground up. Gents, we talked a little bit about, obviously site selection in the beginning of the show. Now we're talking about construction, but How did we get from the site to construction phase? I know you wanted to dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah, great question that is really critical because I think most people, especially most of our clients, have never done this before.
Sure.
Many won't ever do it again. And so they don't understand that. They understand that you buy a site, and while it can be complicated, that's not the hardest part. Phase 3, what we call it, so phase 1 site selection, phase 3 is construction.
Okay.
That can be complicated. It's like a sausage factory, right? The end product tastes great, you just don't want to see it being made.
Okay.
And so most people get that.
Yeah.
They understand. They don't know how we got from the site to the start of construction, which can be a year. I've had them be over 2 years, and what happens in that phase.
Yeah.
That's the riskiest part. So you buy a site, assuming you've pre-qualified it and it's going to work, now you're done, right? Your broker got paid by a commission. The last part, the construction part, you start it, your general contractor gets paid a fee, and you finish it and move in.
Yeah.
That middle part's fuzzy. That's the developer. A lot of people call it project management, construction management. That's true. We put an umbrella over that and call it development. And it's the place that you can lose the most money, lose the most time, and a project can even die. And to not have somebody in there in that phase, they're doing things like bridging the gap between the budget and the banker, the financing and the equity. They're interfacing with the city, environmental. You know, TCEQ in Texas governs things like environmental quality, water quality. Those things are incredibly crucial. They're the person who is talking to the their interpreter, talking to the civil engineer along the way, talking to the architect. They're talking to the general contractor. We are the general contractor in most of our projects, so we're both roles. But we are taking that project and making it construction ready. You can pretty much put your finger on what a project's going to cost, change orders, notwithstanding.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to know what that middle phase is going to cost you. And that's why really somebody working 50, 60 hours a week, full time, it's not a do-it-yourself part of the project. And usually you pay a project manager or developer a fee.
Okay.
Usually it's a percentage of the cost of your project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And are they doing things like, pulling permits and that sort of stuff as well?
They are. So a lot of times the architect is submitting for those permits, but it's the civil engineer, the architect, the geotechnical, they test the soils, the city, the state, all of those. The developer is really the coordinator of that phase of the project. And I don't even sometimes want to do it, and I'm a professional. We used to see a few more do-it-yourselfers.
Yeah.
I think they've heard enough horror stories now. It's becoming less and less.
I can't imagine trying to do that.
No,
along with also
honestly,
still working.
Honestly, a lot of banks won't even allow that. Like they wouldn't allow a veterinarian to act as their own general contractor or hire a home builder as their general contractor. A lot of banks won't even let them go through project management without an expert on board. Smartest money you'll ever spend.
We've had a couple of docs tell us that they did manage the process, didn't use us.
Yeah.
Their comments was, I will never do that again. And it literally took them a year longer than what was planned.
Of course.
For.
Yeah. I'm curious. I would think that most veterinarians have a pretty strong vision for the practice that they've always wanted to build, right? What does it look like? What does it feel like? How do they go about aligning themselves with an architect and a designer? And I know you have this in-house too. That brings that vision to life.
Well, so that's another where the rubber meets the road question, and it's a great question to ask. So, anybody can go out and just hire an architect, and you can spend a couple of months during the planning phase laying out your site. And a lot of our clients now get that service from an architect or a designer that is a free service provided by Patterson, for example, their equipment provider.
Yeah.
That just establishes the layout. That is not an architectural set of buildable plans. It's a great place to start, and these people are very talented because they understand
where
for
equipment
example,
needs to go, where the
veterinary layouts,
Right.
flow, proximity of functions. They get that. We work with a lot of them, but they still have to give it to an architect. The architect's got to design and draw buildable plans, right? The catch, though, is if you spent 3 or 4 months doing that and now you're done with your plans and you send it to GCs, nobody in construction has acted like the referee during that process and said, hold on a second, that right there is going to cost you $30,000, and I'm not exaggerating, more than that. Let me suggest an alternative to that, and I can save you a bunch of money. Or since COVID, supply chain issues, the electrical, the engineer, for example, has spec'd an electrical component that is still 9 months back ordered. I've had a project delayed by 9 months on an electrical component or an HVAC component.
Yeah.
If they have a builder involved from day one, a design build contractor, it's the third leg of the stool. Financing, right? Architecture and design and construction. Well, really 4 because civil engineering.
Yeah.
And we act to oversee that and keep the ball in the playing field.
So you're seeing that for the doctor, but how involved should they be in that construction process when this is happening? Do you recommend that they go and visit the site and are like involved with everybody who's there, or is it better to just kind of like let the professionals handle that?
We keep them involved. We have weekly calls, updates on what's going on with the project.
Okay.
You know, updating the schedule weekly with them. If there's any delays or if we're ahead of schedule, we love keeping them involved. And they like staying involved.
Oh, I'm sure.
And they'll visit the site quite often.
Yeah. Can we talk about some of the, with the unknowns about construction? I'm sure there's common hurdles that happen and things that we have to overcome. Can we talk about what are some common hurdles that doctors can expect during this process?
Sure. So, you and I talked before this about the risks associated with construction. You need to plan for it mentally and financially. Because a set of two-dimensional plans can never represent a three-dimensional world completely accurately. It's a long process. Subcontractors miss details when they bid the project. Their people in the field often show up and realize that something that's drawn in the plans, no matter how good those set of plans are, it really might need to be built a different way. Sometimes it's just a matter of meeting in the field, like Joe said, keeping the client involved, making a decision to do something different, and it doesn't cost anything. Sometimes there's a cost associated with it. It's simply bringing a set of plans to real life.
Yeah.
You got to have a lot of patience. They say, put your patient pants on, right? You got to know that this is not the prettiest process in the world. Surround yourself with experts. Hire truly qualified people, and then understand that when it's all said and done, you're going to be so glad you brought this baby into the world. But it's not easy getting there.
Yeah.
The other thing is the inspection process. We've had city inspectors show up and try to enforce, especially in the site development phase, but even in construction, things that are not on those plans. And you get into a bind. You say, well, sure, I could fight this. The extreme would be, I'm getting my attorney involved. Your attorney would say, absolutely, you're in the right. 2 years from today, we could settle this and you'd win. Well, what happens between now and 2 years from today? So often you're saying, all right, that's going to cost me $1,200 to make this inspector happy. I don't like it, but in the grand scheme of my project, I'm going to go with the flow.
This is one of those things you probably prep the doctors for, right? Like these are potential things that could happen, right?
Yeah, we do. And then there's subcontractors involved. We're the general. Then the sub is involved. Then he's got very often labor that's subbed. So there's levels. There's layers. The client's got to go through 4 layers to get to the guy that messed something up in the field. And so it's a process of managing people, managing expectations, and just staying the course.
Can you share with us any of your most memorable oh shit moments that have happened? I'm sure you've got a ton, but...
Joe mentioned one that we had some heritage trees we couldn't move on a site, and we had to drop the contract on that land and go find other land, right? As a developer, and this is maybe a little bit bigger, but this kind of thing I think is what most of our clients, and probably your clients, don't realize can happen, right? So we had a project, we're working on a 22-acre development in Leander, Texas right now. We own it, right? And so we're developing it around a medical, it's right next to a new hospital. It's mixed use, but there's a 10-building medical office park as the anchor to this development, right? So we're literally already on site beginning to install roads, underground utilities. We're rocking and rolling with a decel lane where the cars slow down on the access road and turn into the project. And we get a bill from the city for almost $2 million for what they call city impact fees. That basically means that they're charging you for all the services that a city has to allocate now to new people moving into their city, right? Cities provide services. That's very often based, if not almost always, based on the size of a water meter or the water meters. Well, they had forced us into a situation where we had this one huge monster water meter feeding all 22 acres, and all the water lines within that development were what we call private lines.
Okay.
Made no sense to us.
Yeah.
Well, we go back to the city and say, guys, this cannot happen. There's nothing in the budget for this. So the people at the city said, we agree. The guy that was here 8 months ago when this got approved should not have forced these to be, we want them to be public lines.
Yeah.
We said, great, we're going to redo this. So we redid it. We made all the lines in there public. The city was in charge of those lines. And it saved us a fortune in developer fees. It took us 6 months of resubmitting plans to get all of that redone.
Yeah.
Well, you can imagine, it saved a bunch of money.
Sure.
6 months to the schedule.
Yeah.
And those kinds of things happen on almost every project. Not usually that extreme.
Right.
But you get it.
Yeah. And you mentioned time. Typically, how long does the construction process take? You've mentioned 14 months earlier on, but that way a doctor can know when they can move in. What's typical? I know every project's different, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're all the way back at ground zero at the very, very start, looking for land, I mean, sometimes the site selection can take 2 years or longer.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of clients right now that we're 2 years into the process. But finding that land and closing on it, then you move into the design, the financing, architectural, construction part of it. Ron, what do you think?
Well, I would tell anybody that's looking at ground up from an undeveloped piece of land.
Okay.
There are pad sites. When we say pad site, we mean maybe you're an acre in a bigger development and they've already brought the utilities to your site. They've already maybe even done some of the dirt work. You know, you walk up and you see what it looks like. It's not a bunch of trees and grass growing on it. They've done some of that. You know that you've got appropriate zoning. That's different. If you've truly got raw land, we tell people that very often you're not going to be ready to break ground for a year.
Yeah.
And the construction, I'd give it a year.
Okay.
So it is typically a 2-year process if you've got the site. Now, have we done it in 18 months? Sure. But you can imagine if the physical construction from starting the dirt work, you know, that development phase leads to not the slab, but that leads into underground utilities, electrical service, paving, parking, all of those things. That construction, and then the building construction, and then the interior construction, that's a year.
Well, the big variable is permitting. You know, depending on what city you're in, it could be a month, it could be 2 weeks, it could be 5 months.
Yeah.
You know, it varies.
Okay.
Depending on where you are.
Yeah. And this is probably going to be a very tough question to answer too, but this is the one everybody wants to know.
Are you going to ask about price, aren't you?
How'd you know? Ballpark.
Yeah. Oh, I can get it to the penny right here.
Okay,
right
great.
now.
Let's do it. Can you give us an estimate of what a typical healthcare practice costs to build from the ground up?
Sure. So, like a true politician, I'll qualify it.
Okay,
right?
perfect.
So, our geography is Texas and the surrounding states.
Yeah.
By the time we grow beyond that, I'm probably retired. But in Texas and the surrounding states, near a major metropolitan area, so let's call it the suburbs of Austin, Houston, Dallas, San Antonio.
Sure.
Let's start there.
Okay.
We're not building downtown Austin, but we're not building on a rural road out an hour from any big city.
Yeah.
So take your land, figure out what that's going to cost. Now you've got soft cost, and that's critical, that you're going to understand what your civil engineer is going to cost and your architect's going to cost. So we help build a model with those typically very known costs. Let's skip the middle part. Let's go to construction.
Okay.
I can tell you very, very accurately that you're going to be in a range for your building. You have to have a roof. I don't care how cheap you want that roof to be.
Yeah.
There's a floor. You can go as expensive as you want, but there's a floor. We can use that and tell you your actual construction cost on your shell building might average $150 a foot. That's slab to the roof and nothing inside.
Okay.
You got doors, you got windows, you got nothing inside. Now I'm giving you a middle of the road. Imagine some standard deviation on either side of that. Okay. Then your interiors, your walls, your electrical, your plumbing, your finishes, your floors, your paint, all of that. In a veterinary facility, again, you might be $150 a foot to $170 a foot. So add those numbers together and you're $300 to $320 for your finished building.
Okay.
What people overlook, we always say that developer phase in the middle is the least understood and the riskiest phase. You can't pinpoint that because every site's different.
Yeah.
You don't know if you've got to go 100 yards down the road to get your water and wastewater. You don't know if they're going to tell you have to have an additional fire hydrant. You don't value engineer that out.
Yeah.
You can decide you don't want granite in your bathrooms. countertops, you can't decide, I don't want that fire hydrant. You're getting a fire hydrant, right? And it might cost you $25,000. So I'd say that middle phase, I've seen them as cheap as $60 a foot to the building square foot, 5,000 foot building, $300,000 to more than double that.
Yeah.
I've literally seen, it could be $600,000, $700,000 just to get your site ready. So now let's say that you've taken that 320 and added 70, you're close to $400 a foot. Add your soft cost and add your land. We're seeing typically $500 to $550 a foot, all in, ground up. Can you do it cheaper? Absolutely. You can cut your land cost. You can do a prefabricated metal engineered building. All kinds of ways you can reduce your cost.
Okay.
But I'm telling you what you plan for.
Yeah. Thank you for answering that.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be very helpful for
I
our
hope
listeners.
that doesn't get me in any trouble.
Yeah,
I feel pretty confident.
I hope so too.
And there's some economies of scale that kick in around 6,000 square feet. I mean, if you were to go do a 2,000 square foot ground up, the cost per square foot is going to be considerably higher.
Sure. No,
That's
that makes
a
sense.
really good point. That was for a 5, 6, 7,000 square foot building. You go to 2,000 feet, you're going to spend less money.
Yeah.
But your cost per foot's going to be higher.
Of course. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Well, guys, I'm going to give you an opportunity. You've hinted at it a little bit before, but tell us a little bit more about Cadre and how your approach is different from other design build firms out there.
Sure. You want to start it?
Go, man.
So, we started in 2008. I'm the founding partner, and we started as a medical development company. We went through our infancy as developers, and from that we realized how good we were becoming at being a builder. So we broke away a separate construction company. We're Cadre Development and Cadre Construction.
Okay.
Cadre Construction builds animal and human health, but we build all kinds of projects. We've got experience with iFly, indoor skydiving, and we're building a huge coffee roasting facility for a gigantic national franchise just because they needed a central time zone coffee roasting facility of 100,000 square feet. Wow. So we're very diverse. We build industrial, we build schools, but we're known for medical, right? We became very good at construction, and that development experience was a lot of the reason that we became so adept at this.
Yeah.
Well, then we had this urge to begin designing as well and bringing that under one roof. So we started Bluefin Design. That's our architecture firm. We don't use it on all of our projects.
Yeah.
In fact, we very often give our clients, we say, you want to get 3 proposals? Let's go talk to 3 architects. And they say, wait, you're going to introduce a competition to your own? And we always say, we don't care how many of our service lines you hire us for. We want it to be the right fit for you.
Yeah.
And we do it all the time. Half the projects our architecture firm wins, the other half they pick somebody else. But we speak the architecture language, we get it.
Yeah.
Again, like being a developer, we understand design. And then I've been a broker now, a real estate agent and broker in the commercial world for 33 years, so we speak that language. If they want us to find their site, we can broker that transaction. We're licensed agents in Texas. If they build a second building on their site and they want to lease that out as income, an investor, we can take that listing and fill that up with tenants. Our clients come to us years later and say, I've sold my practice, but I still own the real estate. I don't really want to be the landlord to the corporate group that bought my practice. Will you help me now sell the real estate? We'll sell that real estate for them, and then we'll take that and we'll do what's called a 1031 exchange, a tax preferred treatment that sellers of real estate get if they now buy a new property, and we'll broker a new property and we'll help them start over.
Yeah.
So very unique model in the industry where it's kind of all under one roof.
About the only cog that we're missing is civil engineering.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so important to use somebody local for civil engineer.
Yeah, why is that?
Just familiar with the lay of the land. They know the city. They know the people who are in the city offices.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, guys, if anyone listening today is interested in learning more, where can they best reach you?
I would direct them either to our website. This is probably more doctors and veterinarians listening to this.
Yep.
Cadre Animal RE, as in animal real estate. That's our website for veterinarians to look at. And then Cadre-USA, CADRE-USA, is our construction website. That's a good place to find out a lot about us. We have others for other companies, but that's a great starting point.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Ron, Joe, thank you so much for joining me today. It sounds like you're really one-of-a-kind turnkey solution for our veterinarians and healthcare providers. So we're excited to be a part of that journey along with you too. So we appreciate your time.
Well,
Thanks, Corey.
We appreciate it greatly. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for joining us. Because you've listened to this whole episode, we assume you were entertained, or at the very least learned something new. If so, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Have a topic you'd like discussed in a future episode? Drop us a line in the comments section or send us a message on social media. If you're ready to take your practice ownership dreams into your own hands, be sure to visit getprovide.com to pre-qualify and browse our practice marketplace, or check out our news page for more helpful resources. The Path to Owning It is brought to you by the team at Provide, and it's produced by PodCamp Media, branded podcast production for businesses. PodCampMedia.com. Producer Dusty Weiss, editor Matt Covarrubias. For Provide, I'm Corey Brown. Thanks for being on the journey with us.
Provide is a division of Fifth Third Bank, National Association. All opinions expressed by the participants are solely their current opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Provide, its affiliates, or Fifth Third Bank. The participants' opinions are based on information they consider reliable, but neither Provide, its affiliates, nor Fifth Third Bank warrant its completeness or accuracy and should not be relied upon as such. This content is for informational purposes and does not constitute the rendering of legal, accounting, tax, or investment advice or other professional services by Provide or any of its affiliates. Please consult with appropriate professionals related to your individual circumstances. All lending is subject to review and approval.